Hello and welcome to another video from Heartland. Today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. Now, a lot of the times when we're here at Heartland, we tend to think of things like the outdoors and we think about like natural world and stuff like that. But there's even more to Heartland than just those things. There's also a lot of history to Heartland. In fact, if you look behind me right now, it might be a little bit out of focus, but we're looking down on Alum Creek. For those of you who have been to Heartland before, just a little ways downstream, you'll actually come to, or actually upstream, I'm sorry, you'll come to where our Eco Extreme site is. Now, Alum Creek actually has a lot of history tied in with it. For one thing, where you're looking right now was a major route on the Underground Railroad back in the mid-1800s, before the Civil War. A lot of people escaped from the South and went north into Canada to their freedom using this very creek behind us. But there's something even older still that is historic in this area. So on the adjacent property, now it's not owned by Heartland anymore, but there's some fields way back there. In fact, we're looking, if you could see right through the trees, we're actually looking straight at one of these sites. There's two areas in the fields beyond us that the Ohio Historical Society had identified as possible places for mounds. Now you might say, well, what's the big deal for a mound? I mean, there's mounds all over the place. Well, these aren't just any mounds. These would be Hopewell mounds. You see, before the people of Europe came here to the United States, Ohio had societies that lived here that never ever got the chance to know that there was even ever Europeans that came to the place. They lived here for thousands of years before anybody had come here to explore. So the Native Americans have been here for millennia. And what's more is they had built mounds all throughout Ohio. And the Hopewell in particular built a lot of them right here along Alum Creek. In fact, all the way down the entire length of the creek and even down the Scioto, there's mounds that are attributed to that society. Some other mound builders that were out there, we have the Adena and the Fort Ancient. And then if you go a little bit further south in Ohio, we have what's called the Mississippian culture that also built a ton of mounds. Now the thing about it is that's not the actual name of the people that built those mounds. That's just the name we gave them. You see, when the first settlers came into this area, they found the mounds, and they didn't know who built them. Now, some people had these wild theories about where it came from, but a lot of the people who are very scientific-minded had already figured out that it was the Native Americans who most likely built it. By the way, Thomas Jefferson was one of those people, and the Smithsonian, one of the very first things they studied were Ohio's mounds. But nevertheless, we don't know what their original names were, so we gave them the names of the places they were found, or maybe the old names that were attributed to the earthworks, such as the Fort Ancient. Those earthworks, they were called that by both the natives and the people who settled here, so they gave them that name. And then the Hopewell was found on the Hopewell farm, and same thing with Adena. It was found in that area, and that's why they got those names. But the people who built them most likely were the ancestors of the Algonquin. And the reason why we don't know who they were is because in the 1600s, the entire area of Ohio went through a war where the Iroquois people, that's a tribe that's Iroquois speaking, so it's actually several tribes, had come from the east, invaded Ohio, and drove out or exterminated the Algonquin speakers who lived here. So they left and most likely took their knowledge of who built the mounds or why they were built. It probably took it with them either to the grave or to wherever they went. And then later, the Native Americans that were here once the Revolutionary War took place, where a lot of us tend to think of later periods with Native Americans, they'd actually moved back into the area. So a lot of those people, even the ones who spoke Algonquin, still didn't actually have any memory of who built the mounds or anything else. So when the first settlers came here, the natives were just as perplexed about who built them and why as we were. They just referred to them as an ancient people that had built them before them. So it's kind of exciting. The Algonquins, we can say with pretty good authority, they were the ones who did the mound building, and they're still studying to this day to try to figure out what they were used for, why they were there, and the amazing talents and capabilities of those societies to build these huge earthworks. Well, thank you for being with us. I hope you enjoyed this little history talk about Alum Creek, and get outside and keep enjoying nature.